Hi there, Malcolm here with my 76th Booktube video, and today it's September's wrap-up. So I've got 9 books on the title, so let's get cracking. First up is Star Wars The Old Republic Threat of Peace. I read this as a digital copy, and it's very loosely tied in with the MMORPG. I say very loosely because I have no idea what this was about. There appeared to be some sort of meeting between the Sith and the Jedi, very much like in the Star Wars The Old Republic novel Deceived. And just like in Deceived, there's the inevitable duplicity of the Sith, and the Jedi Temple is attacked. Beyond that minor plot point, I have absolutely no idea what was going on. This was a disgraceful mess. The artwork wasn't great. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. But no 2 pages seemed to be the same. When I read it online, I thought the person who scanned it and uploaded it had got the pages muddled or something, or missed out some pages. But having read other reviews, no. The story actually does play out like that. It jumps all over the place, sometimes page to page, sometimes panel to panel. I've no idea who half the characters are. Okay, I don't know the MMORPG, but with the exception of a few characters who I do recognise from the novels and the games, this was a big load of absolutely nothing. Complete waste of time, and if it weren't actually digital, I would use it as toilet paper. After that, to another Star Wars graphic novel, Star Wars Visionaries. This promises 10 exciting tales from the concept artists who worked for Revenge of the Sith. And yes, there is some great artwork in here, but the story aspect is rather limited to non-existent. Now, had I liked this, I would have gone through the stories one by one and talked about each one, but I don't see the point, to be honest. The first story sees Darth Maul with cybernetic legs travel to Tatooine to seek his revenge against Obi-Wan Kenobi. That one wasn't bad, if a little bit far-fetched. The other one that caught my eye was Entrenched, following a rebel trooper fighting in Echo Base on Hoth against the Empire, and it was a recording of his last words and thoughts for his mum. That I thought was quite good and nice little insight. But the rest were pretty to look at, but no substance really. Or if there was, I can be bothered work it out. Boring, nonsensical. After that was my book of the month, which is Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. This is book 2 of the Arc of the Scythe series. Ordinarily, I would have done an individual video for this, but thanks to the latest Windows update, which saw the demise of Window Maker, we're still playing around with trying to find a good video editor. At the time of filming this, I'm still trying to edit August's wrap-up and September's TBR. Anyway, a year has passed since the events of the original Scythe, in which a whole bunch of stuff happened, and I can't tell you because of spoilers. So in this one, a whole bunch of new stuff happens, which I also can't really tell you because of spoilers. There's a new Scythe that sprung up, called Lucifer, who wears the forbidden black robe and goes around gleaning other scythes who are deemed to be corrupt. On top of that is the threat to the lives of some other scythes, leading to a big showdown with some monumental changes to the status quo. There we are, how's that for vague? This was absolutely brilliant. I love the first book. Book 2 was set to a high standard, and it met it. I really enjoyed this one. In the first book, each individual chapter is split by a page written by one of the scythes in the story, giving you their personal thoughts and feelings towards certain events or situations. Instead, in this one, we have excerpts and thoughts from the Thunderhead itself. You know, if the internet was sentient and actively looked after the people who used it, that would more or less be the Thunderhead, sort of. And it was really interesting seeing its thoughts and opinions on the world around it. I thought the characters that survived from the first book have developed really interestingly in this one. Like I say, it's a year later from the events of the first one. And I also enjoyed the new characters who were introduced in this one as well. And there's one person who's not part of the Scythedom who really gets a bum deal, but it's a really interesting journey that they go on. You know, if you've read the first one and are unsure about reading the second one, I thoroughly recommend doing so. If you haven't read the first one, why not? Go read it, it's brilliant. Now, just in case you don't know, it's set in the not too distant future where death has more or less been conquered. Medical technology has got to the point where even fatal situations are salvageable, and so you only class as deadish until you're revived in a very quick sort of 24-hour period, sometimes more if it's a particularly bad death. And age is also being cured, and rejuvenation clinics can be used to reset yourself to a certain age of your choosing. Unfortunately, that means the population gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and attempts to colonise other worlds have all failed, and with limited resources on this one, something had to be done. And so the Order of the Scythes came to be. These grim reapers would patrol the streets, singling out individuals according to their own code, and glean them permanently for the last time. And the events of the first book show the schism that happened in the Scythe Order as different approaches to their job come to light. Some take far too much enjoyment in doing so, while others are far more discerning. And the upside of being gleaned is that the family of the gleaned person are given an immunity for a whole year, so they don't have to worry about it at all. So it sounds a bit like Logan's Run, except this time the people who are being gleaned have generally lived very long and fruitful lives, And although not necessarily ready for a scythe arrival on their doorstep, most do find some sort of release from it. Really interesting concept, really interesting books. Try them out. Looking forward to book 3, The Toll, which comes out next month. I need to say, this is booktastic. Next up, I then read The X-Files, I Want to Believe by Max Allan Collins. This is the movie novelisation of the film of the same name, and just like the film, is pretty naff. I've only seen the film once, and I remember being particularly underwhelmed by it. It's based after Mulder and Scully have left the X-Files, they've had the kid, they've given the kid away for its own safety, and they're living in secret, away from the eyes of those who might wish to hurt them. But they're dragged into a missing persons case, mainly because the key consultant they have for it claims to be a psychic, and they need Mulder's expertise to ascertain the authenticity of his claims. If you've seen the film, this is exactly a blow-by-blow account of it, with no extra depth to it. There may be minor changes, but I don't care enough to work to find out what. And you can tell it was a thin story, because I'd say at least half of this book is made up telling you what people are wearing. Every single scene, almost every single paragraph, has descriptions of who's wearing what colour it is, and it got really noticeable very quickly. And at the acknowledgements at the end, special thanks are even given to the person who provided the wardrobe information. I wouldn't recommend reading this. If you're curious about the story, watch the movie instead, because at least that way you can read a different book while it's on. Boring, just plain dull, like the movie. After that is my library book, Bill and Ted Go to Hell. This is the second of the Bill and Ted adventure stories in graphic novel form. I haven't read the first one, not that that's relevant or important, because there's no continuity between them anyway. And this one, an old friend causes quite a bit of mischief, subjugates hell, and then turns his attention towards heaven. And the only people to save reality itself are Bill and Ted. If you've seen the films, you'll know this is extremely silly. If you didn't like the films, give this a miss. If you enjoy the films for the silliness that they are, then you might get a great deal of enjoyment out of this. Somehow they managed to shoehorn in virtually every single character that featured in the 2 films into here. Some get small scenes, some get much larger scenes. Nice zany artwork to go with the theme as well. I thought it was a lot of fun, but then I knew what it was when I got into it. Now, reiterate, this is silly. You don't do silly, don't read it. If you like silly, then give it a go. I'd buy it. After that, I finished reading to my wife, Skullduggery Pleasant Deathbringer by Derek Landy. In this one, the Deathbringer, as the title suggests, threatens all of life on Earth, and it falls to the dead detective Skullduggery Pleasant and his teenage partner Valkyrie Kane to stop it from happening. Again, keeping it vague, because there's quite a lot that's happened in the previous books. This is book 6 in the series, so I don't want to spoil anything from there. This is one of the thicker books, over 600 pages, and it's worth reading just for the dialogue alone. Really sassy, lots of sarcasm, lots of wit. I found the story in this one perhaps a little bit thinner than the others. I still enjoyed it though, and there's an interesting love triangle with Valkyrie at the centre of it, and I thought it was a really bold move of Derek to have his lead character act in a non-heroic way. What she does isn't good, and she knows it. There's no hiding behind it, there's no rationalising it. And then further revelations come up about other characters, which, if not actually make you question anything, certainly divides loyalties. It's what character arcs are all about. Really appreciated in this one. Could have been told slightly more succinctly, but like I said, it's worth reading just for the dialogue alone anyway. We both really enjoyed it. Looking forward to reading the next one. Buy it. After that, I read book 5 of the Redwall series by Brian Jacks. This one's Salamander Strom. This series features a bunch of anthropomorphic animals, usually found in the British countryside, where the predators are usually the baddies, and all the rest are the goodies. Of the series, this is the most complex so far. I'll be reading them in publication order, not chronological order. This one's actually set just before Redwall, the original book, and sees Redwall Abbey besieged by an illness, the deadly dry ditch fever, prompting an expedition to go and seek the cure, the theft of Martin the Warrior's sword, with another expedition to go and retrieve that, and a pair of evil weasels leading a troop of other unpleasant animals to attack Salamander Strom, the Badger Mountain. And so we get the story of that as well. And there's at least another 2 plot strands going on too. I really enjoyed this one. I found the previous books a little simplistic. I enjoyed them enough, but this has certainly got a lot more meat. Now, I've read other reviews who complained about the complexity of these, but I thought it really stepped up the quality of the book. I actually surprised myself by giving this a booktastic. I genuinely enjoyed reading this one. And after reading it, I then read Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Angel Chronicles Volume 2 by Richie Chankersley. And this is the novelisation of 3 episodes, Halloween and What's My Line Parts 1 and 2. Again, like with the X-Files novelisation, it's a pure blow-by-blow account of what happened, told much better than the X-Files book, I should say. And reading this, I really felt like I was watching them again. Halloween is a particularly good story in which, on one Halloween, during trick-or-treating, almost everybody turns into what they've dressed up as. Completely nerfing Buffy, who's now just some princess. Willow's now a ghost and can't touch anything. Xander's a soldier, which is quite handy, but he can't remember who anybody is. And Spike thinks it's a good idea to take advantage of the situation. If you don't know who Buffy the Vampire Slayer is, go and watch it and then come back here. So I really enjoyed that one. And then What's My Line 2-parter sees Spike finally undergo a attempt to heal Drew and sending some interesting assassins to go and take out Buffy so he can get on with it without being interrupted. Again, some really quirky dialogue. We get to see the romance blossom between Willow and Oz, and all three of the stories do focus on Angel, obviously, and Buffy's relationship with him. I'd say watching them is probably still better, but reading them was almost as enjoyable. Yeah, worth reading. Nothing special, but they're good. And finally, I finished reading A Hatful of Sky by Terry Pratchett. This is a Discworld novel and the second book of the Tiffany Aching series. And I read this to my boys. In this one, Tiffany goes off to learn how to be a witch and goes and stays with the witch to learn the craft. Unfortunately, her as yet untapped powers attract the attention of a Hither, a mysterious creature that likes to inhabit bodies and live them to death, as it were. So a fun little story that sees the main character undergo a major transformation when she gets infected by this thing. But thankfully she's aided by the Knack-Knack Feegle, a bunch of foul-mouthed pixies led by Rob Anybody. Not as strong as the first book, but filled with some fantastic characters. The antics of the Feegles had my boys rolling about on the floor and laughing in stitches, and they're really great to love and appreciate Terry Pratchett's wit. Buy it. So there we go, a pretty poor start to the month, but it did pick up. I hope you enjoyed that. If you'd like to share with me your September wrap-ups, then do please leave a link or a list in the comment section down below and I'll go and check it out. Or what movie novelisations would you recommend? Or not? As usual, if you have nothing nice to say, then please keep it to yourself. Thank you. Until next time, see you later.